You know, the letters are going off the line. You can't, you know, a lot of...
Does not follow instructions would appear on his report card.
All right. Eric is on the play. He's going to start with the creature he needs. It's Nimble Mongoose. Not the fastest clock, but a clock that will work. And we'll see just how fast of a hand Kerrigan has.
It's important for Eric to get off the board on the board fast with something that can apply pressure. Ideally, it would be Delver of Secrets. He'll settle for Nimble Mongoose. He can't wait all day. One Force of Will, one Spell Pierce. This is not going to hold off Andrew from going off. So, got to get on the ball. Got to get on the ground running.
All right. So Nimble Mongoose is going to go ahead and brainstorm. Turn 2 for Rill. Kerrigan just played a Underground Sea and passed. It's not time yet. Storm is really just a flip the switch deck. It does nothing, 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 everything.
Yeah. Occasionally there's a cantrip broken up, but because AJ is trying to go off with a bunch of rituals and adding to a storm count, he wants to hold on to all of his resources for as long as possible and try to deploy them in one turn.
Main phase brainstorm. Erickson. We don't know much about his hand. Right now, resolving cantrips, resolving fetch lands are all good for Eric, because it will help get, like, if he can get that Nimble Mongoose up to a 3/3, that will help his cause a lot.
It's got to be fast.
Yeah, sooner the better. So cards like putting back duels so that you can play crack a fetch land to find the same duel is something that Eric's interested in doing. You see here, he wastes away the Underground Sea. And Kerrigan will brainstorm in response.
That's a spell that I'm sure AJ wish he could have saved for a better spot whenever he had something to shuffle or try to go off in the same turn, but he needs to just make sure he finds the critical mass of mana, a land drop for next turn, so he's just going to brainstorm now.
Yeah, with only 12 lands in his deck, there's a decent chance he didn't have another one in hand. We do see he has a Volcanic Island, so he's going to get to replay that land. Also note in response that yeah, there's no days in Rill's hand, or at least Kerrigan can assume that, I would say. But he'll get a chance on his turn to go ahead and see Eric's hand. Kerrigan goes down to 17, and he's playing around Probe, Bolt, Scalding Tarn.
So as far as AJ can tell, the coast is clear. There's no counter spells here. Now, AJ would require quite the hand to be able to go off this turn, but it is not impossible.
Yeah, so that's the best part. So he has no permanence in play, and you're like, well, coast is clear, and maybe he can go for it.
He can win the game this turn. This is a lot different than standard. Palikronos and friends are not winning tournaments out here. This is a different game.
Aggressively costed 5/5s for 4.
Yeah.
All right, so Volcanic Island, Chrome Mox, Imprinting Ponder. And he's going to go ahead, and he's going to go for it. It's Rite of Flame. That adds 2 red. Another Rite of Flame goes down to 1, but this one adds 3, goes up to 4. So now he's going to play Burning Wish with 2 red floating. This is his, right now he's cast 5 spells this turn already. He's going to get Empty the Warrens.
And this is the upside of playing this build of the deck, is that you get to win kind of manual style in this fashion. A lot of the blue-black builds have to go off completely through either Pass in Flames or just naturally casting ad nauseum. But the Empty the Warrens gives you something in the middle of those two modes where you can go off by storming for, let's say, 6 cards and make a bunch of goblins.
Yeah, so that was a storm of 7 that turn, so he made 14 goblins. No true sweeper in the Rug Delver list, so this should work.
Yeah. We have goblins as our backup feature match and goblins as our primary feature match. Just different sort of goblins. Different goblins. Some play with Goblin Lackey, some play with Chrome Mox. It's basically the same strategy.
You can't put Empty the Warrens into play off a Lackey, though.
That's true.
We'll see what can Rill do about this. I mean, this really invalidates cards like his Lightning Bolts.
It invalidates quite a few cards. Oh, did you spend a card casting a 1/1? That's a sweet deck. All right, here's 14 of them.
Yeah, and I don't know, you know, I'm not sure what Eric's plan is here. He's going to go ahead and Jataxian Probe. He sees Gemstone Mine. Draws another land.
Even if he drew something like Tarmogoyf this turn, I don't think he would be have any shot of really killing AJ.
No, he's going to take 13. No, he can't survive 2 attacks. There's no way he can make enough creatures to survive 2 attacks. And I don't think he can kill enough creatures either.
We've had a lot of tribal beatdowns so far. We had zombies in round 1, and now we have goblins in round 2. here.
Legacy is a tribal
It's a
format.
tribal beatdown
Elves,
format.
goblins, zombies.
Hope Cedric's watching.
It's a lot of Cedric tokens.
Yeah.
And they're all... I don't know. I don't know how Cedric would feel about the fact, about how they're being played. You know, this is...
It's not a Siege Gang Commander.
This is, the Siege Gang Commander didn't make these, you know, or yeah, it's Cedric's, and yeah, they're goblins, but the methodology of making them, I don't know.
There you go. There you have it. AJ quickly up a game.
Yeah, takes game 1 off a quick empty the Warrens.
All right, well, sideboard time. A lot of AJ's sideboard is priced in because he's playing with a Burning Wish package. So a lot of these sideboard slots are just for him to go wish for. He has a Diminishing Returns, a Tendrils of Agony, a Grape Shot, 2 copies of a Abrupt Decay, Toloman Performance, that is nice. Tropical Island, Chain of Vapor, Pyroblast, Past in Flames, 2 Xanadu Swarm, an Infernal Tutor, a Thoughtseize, and Empty the Warrens. I don't even know if he's really going to want to touch any of this. Maybe he wants a couple copies of Abrupt Decay. It's not explicitly an Abrupt Decay matchup. I'm sure it's more for cards like either Sworn Canonist and Thalia that he can't go off through.
Right.
But it may buy him enough time in this matchup, but I don't really see him going to very much. Maybe he wants the Xantid Swarms, but they're a little sketchy in this matchup because Eric has bolts that don't really have targets
Eric has
otherwise.
bolts, he has blockers that can fly.
Yeah.
I think the Pyroblast comes in.
Sure.
That's about it.
Yeah, there's light touches. Because AJ's deck is a combo deck that's about a saturation of spells, he can only sideboard so much stuff because he can't cut rituals, he can't cut the cantrips. The only things that really would qualify as flex slots are the Cabal Therapies, the Duress, and the Thoughtseize. And then in a Force of Will matchup, I can't imagine AJ touching those as well. So, I think he's going to keep his deck mostly intact, maybe change around 1 or 2 cards.
Yeah, and this is a matchup that does get tougher for him afterboard because Eric does have access to a lot of weapons against Storm. He can board up to the full set of Spell Pierces. He also has access to 2 Fluster Storms in his deck, as well as 2 Pyroblasts. So I imagine we would see all of those come in this matchup.
Yeah, what do you think about Rough Tumble? Do you think that maybe comes in after taking a loss to Empty the Warrens?
Well, okay, so do you want to do that as an answer to Empty the Warrens? It would be nice for him to have some sort of way to sweep up after an Empty the Warrens, and it really depends. I don't know how many cards he has that he actually wants to board out. I guess to a point, I'm not a huge fan of Bolt in the matchup. I also don't see the need to play a full set of Tarmogoyfs. I'd rather just have one. You don't need multiple threats, and I think the efficiency of Mongoose and Delver is more important.
Yeah, Eric kind of wants to play a game of get something into play and then hold up mana for cheap counters.
Right, so casting Tarmogoyf is actually pretty risky. So because if those are all cards I want to get rid of, I wouldn't be surprised to see a pair of Rough Tumbles come in either.
And Eric does have those 4 main deck copies of Stifle as well, so he does have good answers to Empty the Warrens.
Yeah, especially once your Rug Delver opponent knows what you're on and you're playing Storm, you're going to want a Jataxian Probe and maybe even Therapy before going for a kill. There's too much to play around here, especially when Eric has cards like Flusterstorm out of the sideboard.
Yeah, so more cheap counter spells, definitely what Eric is in the market for most of all. But that was another explosive opening from a combo deck.
I mean, he just had, like you said, no permanents in play. He saw that the coast was clear, went for the win.
I was talking to Jacob Corey today. He's in town. He's going to be playing. He's playing the Open this weekend, and then going up to a wedding, staying the week after. And I asked him. He's playing Maverick. He had some sort of anti-combo card in his sideboard or main deck that I questioned. I'm like, do you really need this? And he's like, against these people? Yeah, because New Jersey's a pretty combo-oriented area.
I think you see a lot of that, especially in older communities. Storm has been a broken deck for a really long time.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, and you see that even like at Pro Tours. We have a modern Pro Tour, and a lot of your Hall of Famers, like your Kais, your Finkles, they end up sleeving up Storm.
Well, there's 2 different camps. I think there's some people who like the older decks and like doing the busted stuff that you refer to. I think there's some people who also just really like playing with Force of Will and Creature, just the good stuff decks. I think there's 2 pretty pronounced camps.
How about this? People who started playing 15 years ago are not likely to sleeve up Savannah.
That's true. Because 15 years ago, if you were sleeving up Savannah, you'd lose the game. You'd lose the game. It's the same thing exists.
I still have that feeling. Like I'm completely skeptical that when you have access to the entirety of Legacy, that Savannah is the dual land you want.
It's a weird ecosystem because there is the unfair stuff, like what AJ is doing, and then there is the stuff that's trying to keep the unfair stuff in check, which is what Eric's doing. And then there's decks like Maverick that sort of prey on what Eric's trying to do, where Force of Will isn't very good against you, you're very good in creature combat, so the presence of Rug Delver allows for some really honest Magic to exist in Legacy, even though, you know, turn 2 or even turn 1 kills are a thing that can happen. But it does make a lot of the matchups feel like asymmetrical warfare, where someone casts a Mother of Runes off of a Savannah and the other person untaps and kills them.
They're like, yeah, Lotus Petal, Dark Ritual.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what's really nice about playing. What's really sweet about playing Burn is you get the experiences on both ends. You can be the guy where
You're the
like,
unfair deck sometimes, and sometimes you're the fair deck.
And sometimes you're the way too fair deck. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose Storm's one of those matchups when you're playing Burn, you just that seems like a difficult matchup from the Burn side.
Yeah, I got killed on turn 1 on camera in an open top 8. There's a Mountain and a Goblin Guide. That's my board.
Did you draw a land?
No, it revealed Lion's Eye Diamond, and I knew I was dead, but whatever.
Okay.
And then I was dead.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Guess we shouldn't have played the Goblin Guide.
Well, I wanted to know. You know what I mean? I wanted to know. So both players on 6 cards. This is very favorable for Eric here, because Eric needs far fewer cards to win the game. He can play a pretty resource-like game. AJ is trying to build up a density of spells, and so every counter spell Eric draws on these mulligans is really hard for AJ to beat.
Yeah, as opposed to decks like Modern Storm that use engines like Past in Flames and Pyromancer Ascension, Legacy Storm really values every card that it has in its hand. You know, it's doing cards that are +1 to mana, +2 to mana. It's trying to build up toward a big spell like an Ad Nauseam, and that's much harder to do with every card you're down.
In contrast to decks like Reanimator or Sneak and Show, there's some combo decks in Legacy that are just slap A and B together. Right. And those decks can mulligan pretty well because an Entomb and an Exhume and you're good to go. That's less the case with Storm.
All right, Kerrigan has kept on 5, so we will start our second game here. And we'll see what the mulligan was. Eric starts the game on Jataxian Probe. And it is a land, 2 therapies, a Chrome Mox, and a Dark Ritual.
That is a fine 5-card hand there for AJ. He does have some mana to get the ball rolling, the ability to attack Force of Will or Flusterstorm. So not a great start for AJ, of course, mulliganing to 5, but this is one of the better 5-card hands he can have.
He's 2 cards away from an Ad Nauseam. Just needs a mana source and an Ad Nauseam.
Easy.
Yeah. I mean, the mana source part of it's pretty easy. The Ad Nauseam part's a little tougher. So now he knows what he's playing around. The big thing Rill has to worry about are the Cabal therapies. If he has a Brainstorm, this probably means he will hold up Brainstorm so that he can hide his good cards. Speaking of Brainstorm, that was the draw for the turn for Andrew.
And I believe Eric has a Stifle in hand, which makes this, you can see AJ's giving some pause to deploying this fetch land here. A little smile on his face. He knows it's a possibility.
And does it work? And it looks like it does.
No Stifle. Or Eric's not willing to use it here.
Yeah, I would think he would Stifle. I mean, when your opponent's on a mull to 5, stifling their land is, it's pretty certain that that's the play you'd want to make. It just sets them back so far.
We shall see momentarily, I'm sure, what's going on with Eric's hand.
All right, Cabal Therapy is a blind therapy from Kerrigan.
The most obvious name in these circumstances is Force of Will. Oh, it's a spell. It's Spell Pierce.
Name's Force of Will. He misses here, though. So it's 3 lands, Bolt, Goyf, Spell Pierce from Rill. A relatively weak hand in the matchup, actually. Bolt and Goyf, neither of them particularly enticing cards.
But on a 6-card hand, pretty hard to get away from Spell Pierce plus lands plus threat.
Exactly. And especially with the kind of hand that Andrew has right now, that should be just fine. Just gonna go ahead and Wasteland Andrew off. the Underground Sea, and he drew Delver Secrets for the turn.
A big draw there, just trying to get the ball rolling here and get some pressure going.
Yep. Kerrigan plays Chromox, imprinting, Brainstorm, casting Ponder. He chooses to do it that way as opposed to the other way so that he does not Brainstorm lock himself.
Because AJ is not going to be able to shuffle, or is very unlikely to be able to shuffle off the Brainstorm, the Ponder's a better selection tool here. It's the same thing, except he has the option of shuffling away 3 bad ones.
Right.
If you're working on the assumption that you're not going to be able to shuffle.
He's going to keep them. Did he find a land for the turn? The answer is yes, it was a Gemstone Mine. And I imagine we're going to see Therapy on Spell Pierce. And that is what it takes. So just the Misty, the Bolt, and the Goyf left in Rill's hand. Rill currently has no disruption, but that Brainstorm that flips Delver might help him find some.
And we know that AJ does have a Dark Ritual available to him as well, so.
Yeah, he's not too far away from actually setting up a Storm combo here.
And Eric's got to be a little cautious here. I mean, AJ kept with that Ponder and took the Spell Pierce last turn. Normally when the Storm player is trying to go off, they want to wait till the last possible moment to Cabal Therapy to get maximum information and get the most value. But AJ being willing to Therapy there means he suspects that mana is going to be a bottleneck and maybe going off very soon. So I think Eric wanted to think for a second there, maybe I need to actually Brainstorm to find some disruption. But with AJ down to just Dark Ritual in hand, he's going to advance his board and then probably go looking for more defenses the following turn.
Well, with so few cards, AJ probably needs to make an Ad Nauseam to combo. And one of the best ways to fight against Ad Nauseam is to just throw damage as fast as possible. When you deal more damage to the Storm player, they can't Ad Nauseam for as much. So the odds that their Ad Nauseam wins them the game start to drop with each point you deal.
There's a couple of combo decks in Legacy that have that element to them. It's also true of Reanimator because they're trying to reanimate things that cost life, and they're trying to activate Crystal Brand that costs life as well. So even though it seems like a 20-0 game, some of these combo decks in Legacy you can get away with getting a lot of value out of just diminishing their life total some amount.
I suppose that's a route that Burn does often in these matchups.
Yeah, that was true a few years ago. The problem is now with Past in Flames, they have a pretty easy way to win the game.
Yeah, we see the Brainstorm from Eric. Then he's going to go ahead and waste land that Gemstone Mine. On AJ's turn, he had no plays. He just shipped back. Now down to just Chromox. And you see Eric knows exactly what he's working with. He goes ahead and immediately bolts Kerrigan and swings, putting him down to 1. Ninja Taxian Probe. It's Lotus Petal, Rite of Flame, and we're on to game 3.
AJ just not quite able to put something together on that 5-card hand. And Rug Delver is ruthless at trading 1 for 1.
Yeah,
so
the double Wasteland really set his mulligan back even farther. Rug Delver, because of its resource denial package, is a deck that is really difficult to mulligan against.
Especially a list like Andrew's that has no access to basic lands. I mean, he's about building up a critical mass, so every counterspell is annoying to fight through, and then his mana being attacked by a combination of Wastelands that potentially stifles is really hard. You need some sort of opening like he had in the first game where he could win very quickly, because it gets harder and harder as the game drags out, I feel like. Eric rather finds more cards through his cantrips, can hold up more mana for, to chain together multiple counter spells in a turn. It's tough goings.
Looks like a single or a 2-card swap for AJ to re-sideboard. Not much. I'm wondering whether or not he's brought in Xantid Swarm. That would be a thought of the 2 cards that he could be switching back and forth.
It's tough when Eric has shown that Lightning Bolt is still in his deck, and bringing in Xantid Swarm necessitates bringing in a Tropical Island, and AJ's mana is already pretty strained in the context of the matchup because of the Wastelands and the Stifles. The Xantid Swarm is a huge opportunity cost because that's something that could have been a Duress or a Dark Ritual or whatever the case may be.
It's not part of your combo, and the deck wants every card it can get.
Now, there's still going to be moments where Xantid Swarm is very good. Eric can't kill it, can't block it, and has a handful of counter spells. It's not impossible to imagine that happening, but it's Every time you have something that isn't a cantrip or a discard spell or a ritual in your storm opening hand is a big cost.
Yeah, absolutely. One advantage here is that AJ is going to get to be back on the play for game 3. And Storm is one of the decks, especially because of its ability to have turn 1 and 2 kills, that really benefits from that.
And Gitaxian Probe is a big addition to this deck, both being a 0-mana spell, its interaction with Cabal Therapy, and just getting to know when it's safe. Working with perfect information with Storm is just so valuable. Because a lot of times your opponent has 1 or 2 mana up, and a couple of years ago the Storm player just had to say, I cross my fingers and hope, or wait to draw a duress, or, there's a lot of guessing that's involved, and now you work with a lot more certainty.
All right, we will see. Going on to game 3, I have to think it still favors, even though the post-board matchup is good for Rill, I still would like to be the Storm player in this situation just because of the fact that he's on the play. I feel like the deck's so much stronger there.
I still think Eric is a slight favorite in the post-board games on the draw because he just brings in so many good cards. And AJ's effectively presenting the same deck he showed at game 1. Now that said, the best Storm draws, it just doesn't even matter.
Right, that's one of the things that Storm does have going for it, is that its best draws are nigh unstoppable.
And the tough part about playing against this deck, against AJ's list here, is the list that just goes off with Ad Nauseam and Past in Flames, you know exactly when you need to play your Force of Will. There's cards with just a bullseye on them, and that's where you have to draw the line. In a build that can go off with Empty the Warrens, it's much more challenging because you don't know if that Dark Ritual is leading to an Ad Nauseam, which you want to Force of Will, or is just the last ritual leading up to an Empty of Warrens, at which point your Force of Will is too late.
Right, and a lot of Storm decks have that kind of tipping point there. When you counter them, you either want to try to you can try to fight over their first ritual, and that will almost certainly stop them from going off that turn, but unfortunately it lets them reload for the last turn. It's like for the next turn. If you want to really get them, you want to counter their last spell before the Storm spell. But that can be difficult to do, especially when you don't know when it's coming.
Yeah.
All right, so we are on to game 3. AJ on the play starts on Gemstone Mine and to a Blind Cabal Therapy. And if he names Brainstorm here, he'll get, I was going to say that would be, yeah. He named Spell Pierce, so it did miss. Rill's hand has 2 lands, Stifle, Brainstorm, Bolt, Goyf.
Surprising to see him name Spell Pierce instead of Force of Will, just because it's a certainty that Eric has 4 copies of Force of Will, but no certainty that he has a full playset of Spell Pierces.
It turns out he does have a full set of Spell Pierces, but there's no way that AJ knows that.
Right.
I see Nimble Mongoose the draw for Eric. And so now he has to gauge just how defensively he wants to play it. Because he's on the draw there, you see a land and then saying go. This allows him to stifle if AJ goes for a Storm. Also, he can Brainstorm if he wants to. It's not an ideal Brainstorm, but I don't think he needs ideal Brainstorms in this matchup.
Yeah, Eric is showing a lot of respect for AJ's capacity to go off next turn. I think there's a lot of players in that spot would have just said, all right, I'll play my Nimble Mongoose right now and start holding up my counter spells the following turn, but Eric knows that AJ is fully capable of winning this turn.
See a artist mod that's a Captain America Ponder.
Mm-hmm. Fancy.
Yeah. He has deciding on the top 3 cards.
AJ's list with not that many ways to shuffle his deck. I mean, there's just 4 fetch lands, basically, and he knows about the Stifle. So these Ponders are, there's a lot of decks in Legacy where you can ponder, you look at the top 3, you know that there's one of the 3 that you want, and you can shuffle away the rest. AJ doesn't really have the same option, so he's got to decide whether all 3 of those draw steps are better than a random sampling.
So he goes ahead and he's going to shuffle for the Ponder. And that's something I actually like. I sometimes feel that a lot of players do not shuffle enough off Ponder. Like the people are scared of the unknown card and will keep like mediocre top 3s.
People keep with Ponder significantly more often than I would in the same spots.
Well, there's just like a general tendency toward risk aversion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't want the unknown cards. I'll take this. But there's about half the time, the top 3 cards you saw should be worse than 3 new ones. All the below average ones should be worse. And that doesn't mean you have to ship all the below average ones, but you should be shipping a fair number of the below average ones.
So Eric has found Delver of Secrets off this Brainstorm, which is really good for him here, of course. It's another way for him to apply pressure while still leaving up his Stifle, Spell Pierce, Flusterstorm type of cards.
Yeah, so he does redraw 2 of those cards, but he gets to put 1 back and shuffle that away with this Misty Rainforest. And now he's going to be able to hold up Stifle or another Brainstorm while committing to the board. And imagine we'll see it start with Delver of Secrets.
Yeah. Pretty far away from getting to Threshold with Nimble Mongoose, so I imagine it starts with Delver. But that's step 1 here for Eric, is applying some amount of pressure. The game gets much easier for there as AJ is forced to go off in perhaps less than ideal circumstances.
Delver of Secrets played there, leaving up Volcanic Island. Ponder cast by Kerrigan.
So AJ's got his work cut out for him against all the disruption that Eric presents, but remember, he still has, I believe he has a therapy in hand left over, so he's going to be able to sandbag that until the moment where he really wants to go, and then can start going after Eric's hand. It appears that is a Batman-themed altar on that
I
ponder.
like how these are all different superhero ponders. So see here, the longer Kerrigan waits, the worse this is going to get for him. So there is some urgency going on here.
Yep.
And a 3rd land for him. And that's one of the dangerous parts about Storm. If you give them time, they actually can just build up toward 5 real mana sources and just, cast them ad nauseum. Like, each land in play does make their job easier.
For sure. Eric is finding a lot of soft permission off these Brainstorms, so you see Spell Pierce in his hand, a Daze. This is going to be a tough road ahead here for AJ, I feel like.
Yeah, Spell Pierce, Daze, and Stifle added to the mix for Eric. Putting 2 back off the Brainstorm. Remember, he's going to redraw 1 of these, and it will almost certainly flip his Delver. It's going to flip to Lightning Bolt.
Wants to show Lightning Bolt instead of any of his soft counter spells, because that informs how AJ needs to sequence his spells far more than the Lightning Bolt does.
And this seems like a good spot for Eric. He's going to get his first damage in that puts Kerrigan down to 17 off a Delver of Secrets hit. Scalding Tarn played by Rill. He'll almost certainly shuffle away that last card. And he's going to even make a 2nd creature. That's a Nimble Mongoose. Still a 1/1 at the moment, but 3 or virtually 4 cards in his graveyard.
And Eric's leaving himself with the ability to cast Daze, Spell Pierce, and Stifle in the same turn.
Yeah, a lot of soft permission. And we'll see, it's possible that AJ can knock out, I believe there's multiple Dazes here. If he's fortunate, he could maybe knock out multiple Dazes with a Cabal therapy. But he's going to need to do some duress and therapy action before going for a kill.
I do like the Ponders, although I wonder if he should have selected some heroes that are more ponderous than, say, Captain America. Captain America is not much of a ponder guy. He just sort of does his thing.
He's a man of action.
Yeah. Like Beast or Professor X. Those are ponderous.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that.
And I do not know what that is. I cannot identify that altar.
I think it's the Flash. I want to say it's the Flash.
It's a Wonder Woman, Superman, Flash when it appears.
Okay,
Wonder Woman on the right, Superman on the center.
So it's like just a generic Justice League
Justice
ponder.
League, right. Also not a very ponderous set of superheroes for the most part. The Flash just kind of runs around. Superman's not the brightest.
I always had trouble reading Justice League with like the design of Superman, because Superman, he's ridiculous, right? So he can do everything. Superman can run as fast as he wants to run, but then they had to make some some clause, well, but not as fast as the Flash.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean anything, there's comics where Superman goes so fast that he starts going back in time. He can just fly fast enough, because that also doesn't make sense, but I don't know. There's like different levels of, you know, infinitely fast.
The DC universe has a lot of functional errata in it. It's not the most elegant design at all times.
It all just comes from the fact that Superman was kind of a design mistake.
Right. They
Like,
messed up.
He just does everything.
Yeah, they messed up with Superman, and then they had to warp the universe around him.
So Superman's so powerful that all his villains basically are also Superman. Like, because right, if you want to be a villain to Superman, well, you have to have powers comparable to his, and he can do everything. So the villains have to also do everything.
Right.
And right. The most recent errata I've seen in some of the reboots is that Superman's ability is that he can do whatever he believes he can do.
That is really lame.
Right. So if he thinks he can punch through this wall, then he can punch through this wall.
That is incredibly lame.
What it means he has to, you know, he has to keep his spirits high. His weakness is to demoralize him.
Yeah.
Unless he believes he can't be demoralized, in which case you couldn't demoralize him because.
Wow.
Right. No, that actual superpower also is problematic, but in different ways than the original Superman.
So AJ does not want to follow up with this with any sequence and just passes the turn. Again, trying to keep all of his resources available to try to power through it in one turn.
All right, yeah, no land added to the mix though. So AJ didn't progress his board too much. We see he's taking more damage here. That's 4 off an Insectile Aberration and a Nimble Mongoose. He does have the mana necessary to go for the combo. It looks like he has Rite of Flames. But whether or not he's going to be able to push it through all this permission, that's another question entirely. And Eric, wanting to push this game closer toward an end, he adds a Tarmogoyf to the board.
So with Lightning Bolt in hand, if Eric is able to get the threshold, that is lethal next turn. As a fetch land, he has a Lightning Bolt, and he actually can spell pierce his own Lightning Bolt and pay for it to get the threshold. So it's got to be this turn.
He can. Hold on.
4 cards in the graveyard.
Yes, you're right.
Fetch
Okay,
land is
wow.
5.
All right. Yeah, it's there.
So Eric is representing lethal next turn. AJ does not know this, but if Eric was willing to commit 2 mana to a Tarmogoyf here, AJ can probably suspect that he's looking at a kill next turn.
There's no reason he'd make. He already had, with that bolt, he almost already had a 2-turn clock. The only reason your opponent would add Goyf is if he's wanted to make it a 1-turn clock.
So AJ's got to go into the tank. The first thing that he's got to figure out is, does he even have the luxury of casting a Cabal Therapy? That's the big start to all of this. Or does he just have to start casting spells? All right, well, it's going to start with the therapy, I guess.
And the question is whether or not Rill lets this resolve, or just, I think he just starts dazing everything. It's, you know, all he needs to do is survive to next turn, right? So I think he can aggressively use this soft permission just as mana denial tools.
Sure. There was some argument, I think, for letting that resolve because his hand contains both Spell Pierce and Stifle. He can't cast both in the same turn. So if you allow the therapy to resolve, the worst case scenario is you're still keeping one of the two things, unless AJ is willing to name Daze, and that's a pretty gutsy play.
Yeah, I mean, you may just daze it once, so that you don't lose 2 dazes. It seems like a free roll to daze it once.
Sure.
Right, if he pays for it, great. I would gladly discard a card to make AJ lose a mana.
Well, AJ doesn't have Eric rather does not have a second Daze. He has a Stifle, a Pierce, and a Daze. So the bottleneck is the 1 mana he has left over.
All right.
That's why I think if I'm in Eric's spot, all right, well, there's a concession. AJ can't go off through all of this.
Yeah, that counter was good enough. So Eric Rill, 2-1, moves on to 4-0, defeating AJ Kerrigan.